Shalom, everybody. Just go ahead and hit the like button right now. Just get it over with. Be sure and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this track. Still Pulse, Chant of Psalmaday. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this episode, this fiery trial.
Rejoice, rejoice. Good tidings I bring you. Yeah, yeah. A message to you, my friends. Invoke your angels. When flesh shall drop, it cannot conquer dread. No. So blow away your blues and feelings. Spirit said, take the world off your shoulder. One foot in the grave, foolish step to take. Who sowing tears shall reap in joy. Wise man doctrine, assure your Satan. No more stumbling block, backstabbers get down. The righteous reveal secret of the scripture. The wicked their portion vanity. Disciples of Lucifer. Yeah. In your hands lie your destination. The book of true life you hold the key. Mystical powers to you unfold. Seek ye the half that has never been told. Behind the Satan. Behind the Satan. Chant. A Psalmaday I want to chant. A Psalmaday I got to chant. A Psalmaday I want to chant. A Psalmaday. Chant 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 a I reach you, I reach you, I reach you. Reach you the vision, yeah. Come on. Come walk this down easy streets. Attract these angels in dreams and your prayers. Remember the trio of children. Remember the visions of Daniel. Remember the magic of Moses' soul. So dash away your blues and feelings. Spirit said, take the world off your shoulders. One foot in the grave, my friend. Foolish step to take. When flesh shall drop, it cannot conquer dread. No. When flesh shall drop, it cannot conquer dread. Got to be wiser to in this your Iowa. Love it hard for the wicked disciples of Lucifer. Get behind the Satan. Get behind the Satan. Chant a Psalmaday. I got to chant a Psalmaday. 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 Moses he did chant. Samson he did chant. Elijah he did chant. So I want the whole of it chant. Solomon he did chant. Father King David chant. John the Baptist chant. So I want the whole of it chant.
That was Still Pulse. It's from, the song is called Chant a Psalm, Chant a Psalmaday. And I figured that would be a good song to start out this episode with, just because we know that psalm writing or writing praises, that was definitely something that the Hebrew Israelites, my ancestors, they did, and we still do very well to this day. I don't think that there is I mean, of course, I'm biased, obviously, but I don't think that there is any people that can praise the Most High the way Hebrew Israelites do. And I myself, I do not sing. I ain't even going to pretend with it. I do not sing, but I can pick up a pen and write a praise, and that's what I do. And there have been times in my life, as I've shared in some of my videos, where writing praises every day was definitely something that kept me through. And I still write praises. Even though it's not every day, definitely when I do my fasts, I definitely write praises during my fast. And it's something that I encourage everyone to do. And let's see what we've got here. Got my phone ringing. Oh, man. Hold on, I apologize for this. And what I'm going to simply do is turn it off. Yeah, you see how that works out? Just turn it off and keep going. Yeah. Okay, so basically what the last episode, we looked at David, something that he had done that pretty much it's going to set the it's pretty much going to set the, I want to say, not the, maybe, well, let's see, maybe set the tone, set the pace for the remainder of his life. And that is, he's going to have to be dealing with the fallout of a choice that he made to have a man murdered, to have her as his wife, and the adultery that he committed. And yet we know that he kept himself in the favor and in the grace of the Most High by repenting, by acknowledging and making up for that. We know that he was someone who definitely wrote praises. He definitely knew about fasting. And that, again, is yet one more reason why he is, for me, just an example, just a hero. He definitely had his flaws. But that does not take away from his greatness. If anything, it rounds him out. We see, the flaws and the, and the strengths, the weaknesses and the strengths. And, of course, just my background, with art, with literature, something that I definitely have admired about him and probably will all the days of my life are the Psalms that he wrote. In his moments of weakness, in his moments of fear, in his moments of doubt, in his moments of victory and glory and praise, he never once pretended to be the source of his own, he never pretended that he was the source of his own strength. He never did that. He acknowledged and always stayed very clear on the fact as to the source of all of his righteousness, of all of his triumphs and his victories. I praise thee, Yahuwah, and pray that each verse breaketh into being, yea, that they grow into cities and cover the air, surpassing the melody of birds. I pray that each and every praise pleaseth thee, and maketh thy heart their dwelling place, for thou art a temple. Yea, thou art a fortress, a refuge from this war. Thou art a peaceful river running through a field. Though once dry and barren, it has become green. The grass reacheth skyward and is tender, nourished by thy word, thy precepts. We are new to the field, strangers in this world. This realm is not ours. The briars are old, burdened with souls ensnared on the vines. Of this we will have no part. We seek to sip from thy word and rest on the shores of thy river, where none maketh us afraid. Selah. Praises are something that they can be personal. They can be public, everyone can, do with their praises what they want. And that's the word that I use. I call them praises. And sometimes I know the Spanish word is alabanza. I like the way that sounds too, just to alabar, to give praise. I like the way that Spanish word, I like the way that rolls off the tongue. So sometimes I call them alabanzas. But, just praises. And again, just writing them sometimes when there's just fear and there's doubt. And I think that for targeted individuals, empowered individuals, as I prefer to refer to myself and others, victims of gang stalking, I think sometimes for us it's hard to find, or it can be hard to find a place or something that we can cling to and hold to, that can be a source of strength and a source of comfort. And I say that because many of us, I know, speaking for myself and just a few others, where I've heard their testimonies and such in different videos, where because we're being so stalked and monitored and watched. I've had many experiences where trying to go to 12-step programs, where sometimes after like one or two, attending a group one or two times, lo and behold, the third time or the fourth time, up pops little targeteer, one of these little perpetrators who just, happens to show up, wearing, a couple of draped in red or wearing some type of a red clothing, article of clothing. And then, they'll call for their whistle and do whatever, it is that they do. And again, because the majority of the people in the class, or rather in the class, I had it happen a lot of times in school, but also just in different 12-step programs and support groups where they're not aware of what this person is doing. Some of them I think were clued in, but some of them were not. And so, that of course, made it, uncomfortable for me. I just really didn't feel comfortable sharing, knowing that they would be there probably monitoring what I was saying to somehow turn it around to use it against me, and also performing, their little gaslighting, getting other people on the side, making sure to get a copy of the phone list so they could, go through the phone list and call people and, gaslight me and say whatever they were saying so that I wouldn't feel welcomed. And so it's hard sometimes to find I can't even think of the word for it, but just to find that port, that harbor where we can, rest from this. And yet with scriptures, with the Psalms, we can do that. And also with writing our own, because it's personal, it's private, Many times I've taken mine and I have type them up and put them in booklet form. Sometimes I would share them with others. A lot of times I would not. I would just keep them for myself. And just, depending on where I was at, if some of this, when the stalking has been at its most, intense phases, being maybe on train, or on a bus or whatever, we just, have, a little booklet of some of my praises, which I would read. And sometimes that would help, ease, my anxiety to just focus on what it is that I'd written, because I knew that it was coming from a place of peace, coming from a place of power. And I know that the Most High inhabits the praises of his people. I will praise the Almighty forever. Yea, I will praise him in the night watches when no one is near, save the shadows of my room and the chill of early dawn. He will hear and know that a daughter of Jacob has awakened. Yea, she sleepeth no more. The slumber has fallen from her eyes, and the light of his sun shineth through her mind. She doth change her ways and keepeth his commandments. He will hear her voice in prayer when her neighbors are lost in powders and drowning in strong drink. Yea, he will mark her footsteps on the narrow road, struggling alone, yet praising his precious name. A candle in the dark is as a sun to a weary pilgrim. So is the good news of Yahushua to the cast-offs of the world. Yahuwah sent his Son that all might be saved, a reason to give praise. He preserveth the living, sustaining his breath in their bosom, one more reason to give praise. Yahuwah covereth the weak and righteous when the wicked chase their prey. Oh, give thanks and praise. Count the reasons for giving praise to the Almighty, and you will have not a list, but a book, and it will cover a lifetime. A page for every hour, a chapter for every day, a volume for every season, a library for every soul. And that's just the truth of it. When we really... this is true for every single one of us, okay? But for children of disobedience, the children of obedience, for those who are committed to supporting and serving the kingdom of darkness, for those of us who are committed to serving and supporting the kingdom of light, every single one of us, when we really sit down and think about it, we all have reason to praise the Almighty Creator, because he created it, because he gives us a day, another day, a day after that, and a day after that, and a day after that, until all of a sudden we're looking at the fact that we have been on this earth 20 years, 30 years, 40, 50, some of us, 60, 70. However long it is, we can look back on instances where something happened, and it is only by his grace that we have made it through. Okay? And again, we look at David, and that was something that he was definitely aware of, that it was only by the grace of the Most High that he made it through. I mean, look, this was someone who, at a very young age, killed a giant. Now, I know that there are some who think that that's fiction, that those things never happened. But there's just been too much evidence now that's being unearthed in that part of the world. Now, we know I wanted to say the Middle East, but the truth of the matter is we're starting to realize that many of the events that occurred definitely in the Old Testament, that they definitely occurred much further south than what has been, we've been led to believe for all these centuries, that some of these events, many of them did not take place in what is now called the Middle East. They did not take place in Northeast Africa, but much further south. But and in those regions where we are now realizing these events happen, we're finding, archaeological evidence is being unearthed that supports what is said in the Old Testament about, the size of some of these individuals, these sons of Anak, the Anakim, if I'm pronouncing it right. I apologize if I butcher that, but these different these giants and such, and they talk about the war of the giants, that some of these people were huge. Okay, but my point is that this was, David, I'm not going to say he was a boy, like he was 8 years old or 9 or 10. We know that he wasn't that young, because it was during the time he ended up being offered someone's hand in marriage. Okay, I mean, so he was not a child in that regards, but he was definitely a young man, maybe in his mid-teens to late teens. But he did something that was phenomenal, and we know that it was just through the covering of the Most High, and he acknowledged that. And we also know that he was a very strong man. And we look at the tribe of Judah, we look at Judah, our progenitor, and he was someone who was very strong. If you read the testimony of the 12 patriarchs, it talks about what he, on a physical level, was able to do. And that was the line, David came through the line of Judah. So we know that when he speaks of killing a lion, when he speaks of killing a bear, the chances are he is telling the truth. And this was the individual who rose up and several years later slew a giant. This is someone who was able to slay between 115 Philistines, 100 to 200 Philistines, and get their foreskins. I mean, he was a mighty man, and yet he knew that it had nothing to do with him, that it was just because of the grace, the blessings, the covering, the mercy of the Most High. He speaks on one praise. I wish I had it in front of me. He speaks of the Most High helping him to leap a wall. And now when I very first read that, I was thinking of a wall like something, like when you maybe coming up to your knee or coming up to your hip at the most, but then learning that in that part of the world, especially during that time period where it was a lot of just war and bloodshed, that walled cities, when you're speaking of a walled city, you're talking about a wall that can be anywhere from 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 feet and up. And if you read in the book of Jasher the wars that Jacob and his sons that they engaged in, when David writes about being able to leap a wall, he's not talking about leaping something that's 4 feet tall. I'm thinking this brother was talking about leaping up on top of a wall that had to have been at least 30 to 40 to 50 feet. Remember, David and his mighty men, no, they were not dealing with people that were like 5 feet tall and 6 feet tall. They were battling some serious giants, Nephilim. Okay, if we look again in the land of Canaan where he was at, and that reminds me, I had mentioned some of what he might have had to endure because of what we know his nemesis Shaul was into, and I couldn't find it, trying to find that a description of what it was that the Canaanites were actually doing, and why it was that that the Most High did not want us to intermarry with them, and he didn't want us to take on their gods, and we were to destroy their groves and such. And I couldn't find it, but I found it. It's in the Apocrypha. If you look in the Wisdom of Solomon, and I've got two versions here. I've got the let's see. I've got the King James version, which is, and I've got it through this one was printed through the Cambridge University Press. And then I've got another one, which is, it is the Revised Standard Version. Okay, the Cambridge Press one is King James Version, but this one through the Oxford University Press, it is the Revised Standard Version. So the wording is, the translation is a little more modern, but I'm going to read both of them just so you get an idea of what it was that Joshua and Caleb, the land that they brought our ancestors to, and what it is that they were battling with, because the Canaanites, their deities, they were all over that area, and so what it is they were dealing with, and why it was that they were not to have anything to do with them. But we know that ultimately, the majority of my ancestors fell into it. But okay, let's see. This is Wisdom of Solomon, starting at chapter 12. I'm going to read. This is the Cambridge University Press. I'm going to read that one first. This is chapter 12, starting with verse 3. Chapter 12, verse 3. For it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our fathers both those old inhabitants of thy holy land, whom thou hatest, for doing most odious works of witchcrafts and wicked sacrifices, and also those merciless murderers of children and devourers of man's flesh, and the feast of blood, with their priests out of the midst of their idolatrous crew, and the parents that killed with their own hands souls destitute of help, that the land which thou esteemest above all other might receive a worthy colony of Elohim's children. Okay, so that's what they were into, and that is what we were not supposed to be a part of. We were to remain separated from that. And yet, by the time of the life of David and Saul, we know that that was not the case. And that's where, again, when you look at what David dealt with in terms of the fellow that was called, I can't remember his name right now. I can't think of it. It just slipped off my tongue. But the Carmelites that he ended up taking for wife, her husband being a son of Belial, what that meant being a wicked man. But this was what that was referring to. In many instances, these were people who were caught up into that. Okay, now this is the Apocrypha. This is this is the Revised Standard Version, and this is from the Oxford University Press, and it's the same chapter 12, starting at verse 3. Those who dwelt of old in thy holy land, thou didst hate for their detestable practices. Those who dwelt of old in thy holy land, thou didst hate for their detestable practices, their works of sorcery and unholy rites, their merciless slaughter of children, and their sacrificial feasting on human flesh and blood. These initiates from the midst of a heathen cult, these parents who murder helpless lives, thou didst will to destroy by the hands of our fathers, that the land most precious of all to thee might receive a worthy colony of the servants of Elohim. Okay. Yeah, so that was, I had wanted to find that because, again, looking at what David, where he spoke in, I think more than a few Psalms of the terror at night and the night watches. And again, just what many of us deal with, waking up through nightmares, through people walking through our dreams, sending us, horrible, just nasty, perverse dreams and imagery to torment and plague us, to rob us of our sleep as part of these gang-stalking programs, to keep us in a place of fear, so that during the day when we should have the strength, to be able to be focused and alert, to just have that inner integrity, to not, snap or become impatient. A lot of times we don't have it, and yet we know that if we are keeping our place in a place of righteousness, where we are not losing ourselves in alcohol and drugs, we can call on an inner strength. And one of the things that can help us is if we, or I found that helped me, and that's just why I'm sharing this, is writing praises. Because again, like I said, and then typing them up and having them in booklet form that I could just, keep in my pocket, or just, in my backpack, and just, open it up and just start to read again, just not reciting out loud or anything or drawing attention to myself, but just to read and just, bringing me back to the place of peace and comfort that I was in when I wrote it. I praise Yahuwah, for he both heareth and answereth my prayers. I call on the heavens to praise the Almighty, for he inclineth his heart to my prayers. I thank the Almighty Father for opening thy door when I lift up my voice. May the timbre and tone of my soul never be a stranger at thy throne, nor my words deemed unfamiliar stones. I thank the Abba Yahuwah for answering my pleas, for binding the strong man and melting his fiery darts. Yea, his net was cast, it spread out to ensnare my soul. I called on thee for deliverance, and the fibers of his net fell away as sand and dust in a prevailing wind. In visions and thoughts, dark sayings and sensations, thou answerest my petition. May I never move from the shadow of thy wings. May thou never withdraw thy presence from my soul. I will praise thee every day from this day forward, if thou wilt be the hedge around my life, the song in my veins, the covering over my house, and the resting place between my shoulders. And it's something that I encourage every empowered individual who is seeking to walk this out for as long as possible from a place of righteousness. I mean, because again, as I've mentioned several times, children of disobedience, we walked with them, and we have that choice. If we choose to try and deal with this through that way, we can do that. We have the free will. We can choose. And if you choose to deal with this by maybe drinking and trying to numb and dull the fear, snorting it away, or injecting it in your veins, or whatever, using drugs and alcohol, or maybe you might choose to fight fire with fire. But if you choose not to, then what you're looking at is trying to find a source, a weapon, an instrument that can help you, but that will help you maintain a sense of just serenity or a sense of strength. Then I would encourage you to write praises. And if you, I'm not saying, that you have to share your praises with anyone. You just keep them to yourself. I mean, I know that I have, unfortunately, just because of just different instances, as I shared, being in shelter and having someone go through my things and steal some of my, like USB sticks, and hacking into my computers. I know that there are people that have, copies of my, just the different, chapbooks of praises that I've written, and just trying to find some way to find some peace around that, just having, those praises stolen, and that was something that really hurt, and it was really frustrating. But one thing that I know, I was listening to it's a sister who does a channel. Okay, now the name of the channel is, okay, let me get this right, because I don't want to be, okay, I think it's like the Mystery of Iniquity. But she mentioned something in one of her the sermons that she did, where she said that those individuals who, these stalkers, these children of disobedience who steal other people's gifts and talents and the works of our hands, that she was saying that one of the things that happens is that those things that they steal become a snare and a trap for them because it wasn't intended for them. So while they're thinking, again, through this, through the flesh, this physical realm, they're thinking, they're going to take, one of my chapbooks of praises, change the name on it. I'm assuming, I don't know, and put their name on it and say that they wrote them. Okay, and maybe, impress some people and get them into thinking, wow, they wrote all these praises. Oh, wow, that's really great. That's really good. And I guess they're not thinking that the Most High is watching them. I mean, he watched me and listened to me as I wrote them, as I shared them with him in prayer. And I guess they're thinking that somehow that they're pulling a fast one on the Most High as well. I mean, I don't know how that works. But, I don't let it stop me, because the other thing is that I stay clear on the fact that the praises are being shared. Other people are hearing them. No, they're not. They don't know that I wrote them, because somebody sat up there and, stolen them and put their own names on it, But the praises are reaching them nonetheless. So maybe somebody might read one of them or a couple of them and still be inspired, to praise the Most High, or to learn a little bit more about the Most High. Because I use the name Yahuwah. I use the name Yahushua. So maybe it might encourage them on that level to find out a little bit more about, Yahushua. Okay, wow. Okay, and so it still might serve a purpose, But that's just me trying to turn, some lemon into a glass of lemonade, or a picture of lemonade. There's this one resident at the shelter who said that she was given orchards, lemon orchards, and she tried to turn them around. And she did. Just the fact that she had shared I thought that was funny. But it just something else. It just having those conversations and such, and just writing about praises and talking to people about them. It just it reminded me of something else. All praises to thee, Almighty Father, for thy soothing words penned by prophets and seers of old, for they strengtheneth me. Yea, they are walls of a fortress when the wicked attack. I am merely breath inside this temple, a body that will one day go to sleep, and my breath will melt into the wind, floating on the other side. Yea, I am a breath passing away. When the wicked tormenteth my soul, as zephyrs troubleth the water, I seek solace in thy precious words, and the waters grow still. Servants are not greater than their master. The wicked didst torment and demean Yahushua the Anointed. Am I better than he? They didst deem his temple a whipping post. Am I better than he? I can expect no less. I manifest his life with heart and hands, and carry his death on my back, shoulders, and about my neck. All of my suffering and despair are amplified by the wicked, yet I endure. Yea, I know that it is not in vain, for salvation offers itself to me. When it does, all tears, fear, and confusion and resentment flee into the night as if condemned. As vines cling to pillars, circling round them with tiny fiber hands and feet, so do I to those words of promise. Almighty Yahuwah will lift me up through his Son, Yahushua, but the wicked will sleep in beds of fire. And that's something that I remind myself of, and that constantly, and that is again just John chapter 15. Starting at verse 18, if the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you. If ye were of the world would love his own. But because ye are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you. Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his master. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also.
the days of old. Prediction, yeah. was just an prediction all a long time ago. Selassie was neglected. Tell me when. Like the tales of the Messiah, all over again. Gabby was rejected. Tell me when. Unlike the Baptist, he kept his head. I said so long. God never double let a rebellion cause they use their heads. Had the next in the news. Martins are free. Freedom condemned. Hey, prophesy shot. We would suffer by those themselves too. They have to walk all night and see. They send it off. They are on the left. I feel like off the top. They are on the left. Tomorrow's what we're on about, not yesterday. Tomorrow's what we're on about. Tomorrow's what we're on about, not yesterday. It's up to man to understand, to have success upon this land. Gotta have some faith. Have some faith. Have some faith. Have some faith.
You know, that's something that I really like about Still Pulse and a lot of reggae artists is that they definitely give praise. And again, I think I shared this in another episode, but you know, they talk about Jah, and that kind of used to throw me off. But then I found it, if I can remember it, I think it's in Psalm 68, where it literally does give the name of the Most High. And I think it's Psalms, so I'm going to find it here real quick, Psalm 68. I think it's like Psalm 68, verse 3, verse 4, something like that. Let's see if we can find it here real quick. Yeah, Psalm 68, verse 4. Sing unto Elohim, sing praises to his name. Extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name Jah, and rejoice before him. J-A-H. So, of course, we know the Hebrew, the J would be a Y, so it would be extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name Yah, and rejoice before him. So I've always liked that about reggae, and that's interesting. I had this, you know, when you do this looking back over your life, looking back down memory lane, I can remember this fellow who, at the time, I thought he was a friend, but now, of course, you know, I realize this was a frenemy. But at the time, he had told me, you know, he was like, yeah, you know, if you're ever, you know, taking acid and you're having a bad trip or whatever, just be cool and smoke a bowl and put on some reggae music, man, and everything will be cool. And I went to see Still Pulse. I saw them in concert at the Warfield in Frisco, and I went with him, with this fellow. And of course, now I look back on that, I realize, that he was not quote unquote a friend, but the more accurate phrase would be a frenemy. And we have those, right? I know I'm not alone in that, where you were dealing with this in your maybe early stages of this gang-stalking program, where these individuals who were doing things and you didn't even know what was going on. Maybe again, being a child of disobedience, our eyes were blinded too, so we were sitting up here walking neck and neck with these people, just doing the same foolishness that they were doing, except what we weren't aware of is that we were the ones being done unto. And I think sometimes they weren't aware of the role that they were playing. And that's sometimes what's so frustrating and sad about this, is that we look back at some of the individuals who we ended up having to let go of and leave behind because they were so dangerous to us, when we decided to walk by the true light and to forsake the false light, and they chose to stay in the false light, and we had to leave them behind. And yet some of them truly, I like to think that some of them are actually wheat as well. But maybe one of the phrases or one of the verses in the scripture say that the steps of the righteous man are ordered. So maybe it's not when I left them, when I had to leave them behind, maybe it was not their time to be awakened, for the scales to fall from their eyes. But who knows, maybe now it is. I just think back, as now 10, 15, 20 years have gone by, maybe they're awake too. Maybe maybe the scales have fallen off their eyes, and they're looking around and seeing this, just how deep this rabbit hole definitely goes. But I don't know, but I do know that one of the things that has definitely helped me to make it through is the scriptures, is looking at the life of King David and just finding strength and applying some of his tactics to my life, and just praising the Almighty, because that was one of them. A good hefty percentage of the Psalms were written by him. And again, that was something that, because I've been writing, pretty much off and on all my life, going back to even before I went to school. And I just have those memories, and I have more of them, thanks to just doing early childhood recovery, and just always writing, and now having a righteous reason to write, and having a goal, and taking all of them and compiling them into a manuscript, and hopefully someday, maybe I don't know, maybe they'll end up being published so that I can share them with others and inspire others. But definitely, I'll just say it again. I can't say it enough, and I probably will not say it. I will not say it enough. I will just keep reiterating it, and that is that it is. I encourage you to write praises. If you are truly wanting the Most High to be with you, to help you to walk this out, to endure and overcome and not fall and give satisfaction to these perpetrators who are tormenting you, who are stalking you, who are giving you hang up phone calls, who are doing street theater and noise campaigns in front of your house, or underneath your bedroom window, or next door in the apartment across the hall from yours, or who are gaslighting you and saying all kinds of vicious things about you. If you don't want to give them the satisfaction, one of the things that you can do is to keep the commandments, to cultivate a relationship with the Most High through prayer, through writing praises. That is something He will be with you. Again, He inhabits the praises of His people. Let us praise Yahuwah. We are the works of his hands. Every living soul hath reason to praise him. The rich should praise Yahuwah, for he giveth them the means to provide for themselves. And the poor should praise him, for their blessings come from on high. The wicked should be still and praise the Almighty, for he gave his Son as a ransom. And the righteous should give thanks that he keepeth them from sin. The dead should give praise, for they shall not always sleep. The living should shout for joy, that every breath is a golden coin. Yea, the Almighty maketh contrast, that his greatness may be seen by all. None can escape the touch of his hand. Even the seasons differ one from another, and every day sings a melody unlike the day before. Yea, each blade of grass shaves the sun from a different plane, and views the sky through different eyes, yet they all bow before Yahuwah when he rideth the wings of the wind. You know, there's a psalm that David wrote that I think that it pretty much, whenever I read it, I think of, the experience, what happened when he was, that whole incident with Bathsheba and Uriah. It's Psalm 32. Now, what I've done is I went through, I did this a long time ago, but just finding different commentaries on, let me see if I can open this page here, this file. Different commentaries on some of the different theologians and such who have studied and definitely put, they have a lot more knowledge and learning. Excuse me, sorry about all the thumps and noises here. But about the scriptures. And there's a fellow, Charles H. Spurgeon. And these are the Gentiles who, I think, when they were doing their studies and doing their writings, this was a generation of them that were, many of them, they had not yet been deceived. Those men that, as Jude calls them, these transgressors from the womb, who crept in to the body of the Messiah and eventually corrupted and overtook the episcopal leadership. I don't think that when some of these individuals were writing, I don't think that had yet occurred. Maybe it had, but I don't think that it did. But when I look at Psalm 32, this is one that I think that that David wrote, probably, I wonder if it was not in reference to the forgiveness that was granted to him, because we know that again, the wages of sin is death, and Nathan told him that that it had been removed from him, that he would not die. But Psalm 32, this is what verse 1, it says, "Blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered." And this is the commentary that Spurgeon shares with it. Okay, let me find it here. Okay, blessed. Like the Sermon on the Mount, this psalm begins with Beatitudes. This is the second psalm of benediction. The first psalm describes the result of holy blessedness. The 32nd details the cause of it. The first pictures the tree in full growth. This depicts it in its first planting and watering. He who in the first psalm is a reader of Elohim's book is here a suppliant at Elohim's throne, accepted and heard. Blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven. He is now blessed and ever shall be. But he, ever so poor or sick or sorrowful, he is blessed in very deed. Pardoning mercy is of all things in the world most to be prized, for it is the only and sure way to happiness. To hear from Elohim's own spirit the words absolvote is joy unspeakable. Blessedness is not in this case ascribed to the man who has been a diligent lawkeeper, for then it would never come to us, but rather to a lawbreaker, who by grace most rich and free has been forgiven. Self-righteous Pharisees have no portion in this blessedness. Over the returning prodigal, the word of welcome is here pronounced, and the music and dancing begin. A full, instantaneous, irreversible pardon of transgression turns the poor sinner's hell into heaven, and makes the heir of wrath a partaker in blessing. The word rendered forgiven is in the original taken off or taken away, as a burden is lifted or a barrier removed. What a lift is here. It cost our Savior a sweat of blood to bear bear our load. Yea, it cost him his life to bear it quite away. Samson carried the gates of Gaza, but what was that to the weight which Yahushua bore on our behalf? Whose sin is covered? Covered by Elohim, as the ark was covered by the mercy seat, as Noah was covered from the flood, as the Egyptians were covered by the depths of the sea. What a cover must that be which hides away forever from the sight of all, the seen Elohim, all the filthiness of the flesh and of the spirit. He who has once seen sin in its horrible deformity will appreciate the happiness of seeing it no more forever. The Messiah's atonement is the propitiation, the covering, the making an end of sin. Where this is seen and trusted in, the soul knows itself to be now accepted in the beloved, and therefore enjoys a conscious blessedness which is the antipast of heaven. It is clear from the text that a man may know that he is pardoned. Where would be the blessedness of an unknown forgiveness? Clearly, it is a matter of knowledge, for it is the ground of comfort. And I really like that because I think it just covers it perfectly. That David, even though, we know he committed, a grave sin that for many is unpardonable. But we know that he fasted, that his repentance was legitimate. He did not get a free pass. Okay, we know again, as we were reading in Samuel, he's got to deal with this for the rest of his life. It's just that the sword would never pass from his house. The Most High said that he would raise up evilness within his own house, and that evilness would come against him. So, and again, those of us who are familiar with his life, we know what's waiting right around the corner. Okay, he's got some intense trials and roadblocks ahead of him. Okay, but that's why I think this psalm has even more meaning, has even more power, is because in spite of that, he was forgiven. And again, it's a sweet feeling to have his forgiveness. And then we look at verse 2, and he says, "Blessed is the man unto whom Yahuwah imputeth not iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no guile." And Spurgeon writes, "Blessed is the man unto whom Yahuwah imputeth not iniquity." The word blessed is in the plural. Oh, the blessednesses, the double joys, the bundles of happiness, the mountains of delight. Note the three words so often used to denote our disobedience. Transgression, sin, and iniquity are the three-headed dog at the gates of hell. But our glorious Master has silenced his barkings forever against his own believing ones. The trinity of sin is overcome by the trinity of heaven. Non-imputation is of the very essence of pardon. The believer sins, but his sin is not reckoned, not accounted to him. Certain divines froth at the mouth with rage against imputed righteousness. Be it ours to see our sin not imputed, and to us may there be, as Paul words it, righteousness imputed without works. He is blessed indeed who has a substitute to stand for him, to whose account all his debts may be set down, and in whose spirit there is no guile. He who is pardoned has in every case been taught to deal honestly with himself, his sin, and his Elohim. Forgiveness is no sham, and the peace which it brings is not caused by playing tricks with the conscience. Self-deception and hypocrisy bring no blessedness. They may drug the soul into hell with pleasant dreams, but into the heaven of true peace they cannot conduct their victim. Free from guilt, free from guile. Those who are justified from fault are sanctified from falsehood. A liar is not a forgiven soul. Treachery, double-dealing, chicanery, dissimulation are lineaments of the devil's children, but he who is washed from sin is truthful, honest, simple, and childlike. There can be no blessedness to tricksters with their plans and tricks and shuffling and pretending. They are too much afraid of discovery to be at ease. Their house is built on the volcano's brink, and eternal destruction must be their portion. Observe the three words to describe sin and the three words to represent pardon. Weigh them well and note their meaning. Okay, again, I just the way that was written, I really like that, and that's what David, he felt that his relationship with the Most High was so just right on. It must have been like what they say, like nail and finger. In Spanish, how does it go? Uña y carne. It must have just been that close. But again, if we read the whole thing, that whole Psalm 32, we know that he definitely, I'm sure from that moment on, he had reason to praise. Even though he knew what he was going to have to deal with, he knew that it was not going to be easy, but the blessing he received also, again, that he would have a son that would take the throne, and that throne would be his forever and ever. We also know that David saw the Messiah. David knew that his soul would not rot in hell. He knew that there was going to be a resurrection. And so that right there gave him reason to praise. I think it gave him reason to praise even more. And I'm glad he praised even more. And I may be wrong in, what it is in terms of why he praised and what it was that he saw. But I know that I'm not wrong in that he continued to write praises. I know that I'm not wrong in that he definitely knew that from his lineage would spring the Messiah. He knew this, and that gave him reason to praise. We keep reading, verse 3. When I kept silence, my bones waxed old through my roaring all the day long. For day and night thy hand was heavy upon me. My moisture is turned into the drought of summer. Selah. I acknowledged my sin unto thee, and mine iniquity have I not hid. I said, I will confess my transgressions unto Yahuwah, and thou forgavest the iniquity of my sin. Selah. For this shall everyone that is righteous pray unto thee in a time when thou mayest be found. Surely in the floods of great waters they shall not come nigh unto him. Thou art my hiding place. Thou shalt preserve me from trouble. Thou shalt compass me about with songs of deliverance. Selah. I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. Be ye not as the horse or as the mule, which have no understanding, whose mouth must be held in with bit and bridle, lest they come near unto thee. Many sorrows shall be to the wicked, but he that trusteth in Yahuwah, mercy shall compass him about. Be glad in Yahuwah, and rejoice, ye righteous, and shout for joy, all ye that are upright in heart. Shalom.
Anything should mash up my head, play the music me can't do. Joy in music prolongs, gives me life to praise Jah. Emotion with music, getting what we want, getting what we need. Emotion with music, getting what we want, getting what we need. Oh, rock little children, rock. Rock little children, rock. Yeah, rock little children, rock. Rock little children, rock. Dancing, stepping in a rhythm passion. Dancing, go there, dancing. Let the music rock me. Dancing away. I love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not. No, I love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not. No, I love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not. No, I love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not. No, burdens to haunt me, no pressures to taunt me. Cause I is, cause I is, cause I is destiny. Yeah. Our children rock like so. Our children stand like so. Our children rock like so. Our children stand like so. I praise Jah, forget me not. No, I love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not. No, I love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not. No, I love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not. No, no burdens to haunt me, no pressures to taunt me. Cause I is, cause I is, cause I is, cause I is destiny. Yeah. Like so, like so, like so, like so. no. Love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not, no. I love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not, no. I love Jah, I praise Jah, forget me not, no. Motion with music, motion